Christmas by Rumsfeld. One of the known unknowns is the outcome of the forthcoming referendum on Scottish independence. Let me lay my cards on the table. I'm against it. I think that Scotland is best off with a real Labour government in Westminster and a Scottish Parliament with maximum devolved powers to protect it in those times when it's under attack. That's by far the best outcome of the referendum so far as I am concerned. Some foolish people misunderstand the nature of self-determination. They demand Scottish self-determination. But Scotland already has self-determination. Self-determination means the right to choose whether to be an independent state or whether to be a part of a multinational state. I generally favour the latter. I think that the world has too many countries, not too few, and that the way forward for the world is greater and greater unity, not more and more division. One of the most acute, smartest commentators on not just Scottish affairs, but world affairs, is on the line on the Mother of All Christmas podcasts now. He is the author, analyst, writer, John Wight in Edinburgh. John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, good. And I'm wondering, how goes the campaign? How goes the referendum campaign? Where does it look like opinion is settling?
Well, based on the release of the SNP/Yes campaign's white paper 2 weeks ago in a blaze of glory in front of 200 journalists in Glasgow, it's not going very well, George, because what was meant to be a manifesto supporting independence, answering all the questions pertaining to independence, setting out a strong case for independence, has proved to be a mishmash of muddled and magical thinking, based on a set of assumptions with a very tenuous grasp on reality. The key issues, as you know, with regard to independence are the currency, the head of state, potential NATO membership, trident nuclear weapons on the Clyde, and membership of the EU. So if we take those one by one, let's look at by far the most controversial, which is the currency. The SNP are proposing that Scotland retains sterling, which is the UK currency at present, when it becomes independent, as part of what they describe as a sterling zone. Now, this would automatically hand a key lever of economic policy, interest rates, the ability to set interest rates, into the hands of a foreign bank, i.e. the Bank of England. Now, this would...
The clue is in the name, the Bank of England.
Absolutely. Now, I don't agree with former Prime Minister Gordon Brown on very much, but I do agree when he describes this as self-imposed colonialism. It would involve Scotland adopting a similar relationship with regard to the rest of the UK as Panama currently has with the United States. So this would mean that the amount of mortgage payments that Scots pay would be determined by a foreign bank, the value of their savings, borrowing costs, and their pensions. This cannot be described as independence in any meaningful sense. Now, the astounding thing is they don't have a plan B. They are assuming that this will be allowed to take place. It's not been confirmed.
I don't think it will be. I mean, yes. Before we leave this point, why would an English government, having been deserted by vote in Scotland for independence, why would it allow a foreign government, as the Scottish government would then become, to do all the things that Social Democrats and even socialists who support independence plan to do? Why would the Bank of England allow its currency to be devalued by high levels of public spending, low levels of taxation, and a set of economic policies which are not democratically controlled by them?
Absolutely. It would immediately place the so-called independent Scottish economy into a very vulnerable state, to say the least. So that's a disaster in the making. But the argument put forward by the SNP, in particular Deputy First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, is that sterling is not per se a UK currency, it also belongs to Scotland. Now, this is a nonsense. Sterling is a UK currency. prior to the Act of Union in 1707, which joined Scotland and England in one nation state, Scotland had its own currency, which was called the pound Scots. They abandoned that in favour of sterling. So it demonstrably is a UK currency. And if Scotland leaves the UK, then it becomes a foreign currency.
Yeah, absolutely. Why didn't they have the courage of their convictions, John, and say that an independent Scotland would join the euro? Could it be because the euro is not going that well?
Well, the euro has tanked. And there is no future in the euro, certainly not in the short term. And that would automatically place the fortunes of an independent Scotland into the hands of the European Central Bank. And you just have to look at Greece to see how that's going, or Spain, or Portugal. So, the comments you made at the top of this item are absolutely correct. We live in a neoliberal world, and independence and a series of small states in Europe plays right into the hands of vulture capitalists such as Rupert Murdoch, who, by the way, is supporting independence.
Indeed, yes. I wonder why.
Why? Because it enables him to bargain for a better deal so that he can maximise his profits and the shareholder dividends, because he can drive down production costs by saying, I will set up a plant here if you give me lower taxation, if you give me all these certain subsidies, and if the wage levels are low enough to make it profitable, or more profitable than I can get regarding the same plant over the border. The empirical evidence is that every small state in Europe that has broken away from a larger state in the last 30 years, former Czechoslovakia into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, the former Yugoslavia into a series of small states, the Baltic republics, they've all moved to the right because they're all now competing for the same investment.
Yes, they've all raced to the bottom.
Yes. So the idea that the SNP can create a social democratic utopia in the midst of a neoliberal world is complete nonsense. It's the same as you saying, I'm going to go out for a stroll tomorrow morning in a shorts and T-shirt and flip-flops and ignore the weather. Well, you may do so, but the weather certainly will not ignore you.
Very well put. Now, if it's illusory that they can use the pound and do with it as they will, it may be equally illusory to imagine that Scotland, as an independent country, would automatically gain admission to the European Union.
That's correct. There's absolutely no guarantee on that. And you can bet your bottom dollar, or pound sterling as the case may be, that if they were to do so, it would come with a series of conditions that would not be set by an independent Scotland. It would be set by the European Union in Brussels.
Yeah.
So that's something else to contend with.
Because the Spanish government would not want to encourage the precedent that the breakup of countries automatically means that the breakaway separatist part would automatically gain access to the European Union. Why would they? Because they've got several separatist problems within their border. The Belgian government, if Belgium has a government at the moment, who knows? But the Belgian government, which is facing a separatist ramp, would not want to encourage the view that all you can do, you could walk out of the state you're in, but you'll still be in the EU.
Yes, absolutely correct. And there is another series of myths that must be dispelled with regard to the case for independence. There are some people who are trying to maintain that we should vote for independence because we'll get rid of the Tories. Now, it's long been said that suicide is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. and this would be political suicide because, as you know, and as you have articulated, you may get rid of the Tories, but you won't necessarily get rid of Tory ideas.
No.
And there are some Tory ideas in the SNP's white paper on taxation, on relationship to Rupert Murdoch, on NATO membership, on retention of an unelected monarch. The monarchy in this country is the constitutional linchpin of the British state. How can that be adjudged to be independence? So what
if Britain's that bad, John, how come the Scottish separatists want to keep so much of it? An English Queen, an English pound, governed by the Treasury in London, the Bank of England, and, of course, like England, a member of NATO. And this brings me to the final point I want to discuss with you.
Yes.
What's the point of waving a CND flag in conjunction with your saltire if you're going to remain within NATO, a nuclear-armed military alliance led by the United States, the greatest nuclear-armed military superpower in the world and the only country that's ever used nuclear weapons?
Absolutely. And since the end of the Cold War, NATO's purpose has been the projection of imperial power in places like Libya, the former Yugoslavia. How can that be deemed to be progressive in any meaningful sense? It is an absolute nonsense. We're going to have a small nationalist, I think, right-wing state that wants to join the imperialist club on its own terms. That's not something that anybody who pretends to be a progressive can sign up to.
Well, I just say no myself. In fact, I'm on a permanent tour at the moment. I'm in Edinburgh, John. I hope you'll come along on the 3rd of February in the Assembly Rooms in Edinburgh. You can get the tickets from the theatre. And I intend to be in Aberdeen, if God spares me, in June, and many other parts of Scotland too. So I'm going to throw everything I've got into the battle to try and stop this from happening, John.
If I can just leave you with the words of Albert Einstein, nationalism is an infantile disease. It is the measles of mankind. If you're saying just say no, then you're in good company, and you're in company of the majority of Scots at this moment in time. Long may it continue.
Thank you very much, John Wight, my old pal, and one of the sharpest analysts around. Let me turn to some of the heroes and villains that we were out asking for. Here's on Facebook.